5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
So I was looking at the garage sale section on Craigslist yesterday morning and just sort of looking through the pictures and seeing if there was anything interesting that I wanted to go out and buy. And I saw one estate sale that was a few miles from my house, and in one of the pictures they had a whole bunch of scrap wood. And so I drove up to the sale and all the wood was still there, and I started looking through it, and sure enough, most of it was just scrap junk wood. But then mixed in, and some of it was a bit hard to see in the pictures, there was actually some really nice pieces of wood. And so I asked the lady how much she wanted for it, and she said 20 bucks. So I bought it all, and I told myself what I'm gonna do with it is I'm gonna build some sort of wall hanging art sculpture piece. And the only rule that I'm setting for myself is that I can only use wood that I bought at the sale yesterday. I can't add any of my other wood to it that I have laying around, which is going to be hard to resist because I'm sure I have a lot of other really nice wood laying around that would add a lot to this sculpture. But the nicest piece that I got yesterday is this piece of what says Pistachio on it. Now, I've never owned a piece of pistachio, so I can't guarantee that it actually is pistachio. But it's written on there, so I guess I have to assume it is. Now, I actually Googled pistachio wood yesterday, and I learned something really interesting about it. Apparently, when you put a black light on it, it glows a yellowish green. And I've been working with wood for a long time, and I didn't know that any wood glowed under a black light. But apparently they use black lights to identify certain wood species. But right now it's covered in some sort of waxy paste material that's really sticky and getting all over my hands and really hard to wash off. So I haven't tried the black light on it yet because I figure this sticky material may affect its ability to glow. But regardless of if it really is pistachio or if it really glows, I'm going to base this wall hanging art sculpture around this piece of wood right here. Now right now it's about 4 inches thick. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to rip this down into some pieces that are thin enough and light enough to actually hang on the wall. So I don't have a sawmill here or a big bandsaw or anything. So I'm gonna have to do my best to cut this with a chainsaw. So, it's obviously not gonna be precision, exactly 1 inch thick, but as long as it's somewhat close, it'll work. So I'm gonna base this wall art sculpture around a piece or two of this wood right here. And then I got some other really interesting pieces of wood. Like this one here is really sort of reddish in color. So I'm gonna rip this into some approximately 1-inch thick pieces and see if I can use some of this. And then this piece here looks like a piece of firewood on the outside, but it's actually got a really nice live edge. And I can easily rip this into some 1-inch strips with my table saw with no problem. And here's another really interesting piece that I found. This is just a piece of pine, but the guy did some stain samples on it. And so I figured it'd be kind of interesting to try to tie this in somehow. And, you know, I'm really not placing any rules on myself about how this sculpture is going to be built or how it's going to look in the end. The only thing that I'm going to try to do is use as many of these random interesting pieces as I can out of the wood that I bought yesterday at the sale. So I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I guess we'll see what happens. I wanted to tell you guys what was going on yesterday, but I lost my voice, so I couldn't really talk. But today I'm sort of starting to get it back, so I'm gonna try my best. So when I went to the sale on Saturday morning, I really didn't look that closely at all the wood pieces that I got. I just bought it, threw it in my truck as fast as I could, brought it home, and unloaded it onto the trailer as fast as I could. But, you know, the only thing that I really knew is that the plan was to build a scrap wood wall art sculpture just using the pieces I bought from the sale. So when I started picking out the pieces that I wanted to use to build this scrap wood wall art sculpture with, I started bringing them from the trailer over to the table right here. And I noticed that I had a second piece of pistachio. And I looked closely at that piece of pistachio, and I noticed that it had quite a darker tint to it than the other piece of pistachio that I had. And so I cut it into slabs, and you know, I noticed that it had a really nice design in the middle of those slabs. And so the original plan was to take the lighter color pieces, use those in the center, and then take the scrap wood and build the frame around the lighter colored pieces. But because I like the design of these darker color pieces so much, I decided to make the darker color pieces the center and cut up the lighter pieces and use those as the frame. So how I'm building the frame is I suspended these pieces of pistachio to a 5/8 inch piece of plywood. And I took my grinder and I ground the 5/8 inch piece of plywood back at about a 45-degree angle so that you don't really notice it from the front, except of course in these cracks, but the plywood has to be there. But once the frame's done, the plan is to take some wires and staple those wires to the back of the frame and then suspend these centerpieces from those wires so that they're hanging in the middle of the frame. So I'm no longer building a scrap wood wall art sculpture. Now I'm building a pistachio wall art wood sculpture. And that's the way that it goes sometimes in rustic woodworking. And that's one of the reasons that when I'm doing a rustic woodworking project, I try to never really plan things out too much. You know, what I try to do is go where the wood takes me and not try to overthink or overplan. And this is an example of one of those situations where my original plan was to do something completely different. And you know, I like the direction that this is going, so I'm gonna keep going with it and see if I can get it wrapped up, and then we'll take a look at it and see how it looks. So the pistachio wall art wood sculpture is all done. Now typically when I build a wall art wood sculpture like this, I'll put a coat of polyurethane on it because polyurethane makes the wood look great and it also protects it against stains and, you know, dirty fingerprints and stuff like that. So because the pistachio is Blacklight Reactive, I decided not to do any sort of sealer or polyurethane on it because I didn't want to do anything to it that could affect its ability to glow under the black light. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the black lights on and shut the white lights off, and I guess we'll see how it looks under the black lights. So as you can see, it's got a really intense glow in some places, but then it doesn't glow at all in other places. So the most intense glow is on the parts that look sort of greenish under the white lights, but it doesn't really glow at all on the edges of these two centerpieces. Now, I've actually got another slice that I cut when I cut the two centerpieces, and as you can see, it's got a really good glow right here in the middle, but then the edges don't really have any glow to them at all. And I've also got a couple of scrap pieces that I cut when I made the frame, and as you can see, it's got a very intense glow in the front and on both the edges. So the pistachio basically glows all the way through. Now, like I said at the beginning of this video, I've been working with wood now for about 25 years, and I had no idea that any wood was naturally blacklight reactive. And this is actually really good news for me because I do quite a bit of blacklight painting. So, you know, I'm really looking forward to going out and finding more wood that's naturally blacklight reactive so that I can build frames to complement those paintings. So if you guys are curious about what woods are blacklight reactive, obviously just go on Google and take a look and you'll find a whole list of them there. So thanks a lot for watching my video, and I hope to see you guys on the next one.